A witch who could see the future was saved by the lady who was pregnant for many months. When the witch woke up, she couldn't help but look at the lady's stomach, and she clearly saw the future of the fetus in her womb, a girl with a noble destiny like the moon. The lady was delighted at her words, but the witch's words were in fact only half of the story. The girl's destiny could become the mother of a nation, but will also incur murder as a result. The lady was ready to leave at this time, in order to repay the kindness of saving her life. The witch rushed forward and shouted to stop. She told the lady, no matter what, she will guard the child. A few days later, the lady did give birth to a baby girl, with eyes as bright as the moon. She named the child Yinyu. At the same time, the witch was about to be executed because she was involved in a dispute in the court. Before the execution, the witch saw the sun in the sky split into two, which predicted that there would be two people competing for the throne in the future, and the fate of the moon, which was caught in the middle, would be even more difficult. But all this has nothing to do with her, the one who was going to die. 13 years later, that girl has grown up. This is the first time that Yinyu entered the palace. She came to observe her brother's acceptance ceremony. At this time she was attracted by a butterfly, chased all the way to a courtyard. Her eyes all stayed on the butterfly, even the near ready to sneak out of the palace's Shitsi did not notice. Two people, four eyes relative. The atmosphere is slightly awkward. The son of the world foot slipped, accidentally fell on the body of Yunyu. The two got up. Yunoke took him as a thief, shouted. A group of guards rushed to hear the sound. The son pulled Yunoke to escape. The two come to a safe place, and in order to clear up the misunderstanding, Seal explains that he is there to visit his concubine brother, who has been unpopular with his father because of him, and is unable to use his talents. Yunoke listens with sympathy and he speaks out to comfort him, criticizing the country's firstborn system in the process. The Shitsi on the side is dumbfounded by what he hears. The man's first day in the palace mesmerized all the palace maidens because they had never seen such a handsome man before, and it wasn't only the maidens who were mesmerized, but also the young princess. After just one look, the princess could not tolerate anyone else in her eyes. The young prince was also amazed by the looks of the new teacher. He felt as if he had seen an angel, but when he heard that the other man was only 17 years old, he belittled him again. But when he learned that the man was the new scholar, Seiji immediately changed his face again. Yesterday, he met a girl in the palace who claimed that her brother was the scholar of the new imperial college. Shitsi began to pry into the girl's preferences. Su Yan said no hobbies, just like to discuss learning with him. After hearing this, Shitsi can't help but sigh that his sister is a lazy crybaby who doesn't like to learn. Outside the room eavesdropping for a long time, the princess cried and broke in, brother in front of the face of the sweetheart to say their own bad words, which makes her cannot stand. She cried and said each said are false. I am not a crybaby, I am very reserved woman. The princess then approached her father to make Su Yan her teacher. Although the king favored the princess, he did not agree. The princess cried and left, and a minister took in the scene. He then approached the grand concubine. His highness was curbing the power of their foreign relatives by making Su Yan the position of Taifu. But now the princess had given them an opportunity that, when used properly, would allow them to seek the position of Shitsi concubine. The moment he saw the girl, the state witch froze. The girl was surrounded by a dark light, which was the legendary queen's appearance. Before the witch recovered her senses, another girl stepped forward. The dark light around her far exceeded that of the previous one, and it was also the phase of the queen. The state witch knew in her heart that one of these two girls would surely fail. Soon the state witch was summoned by the grand concubine, saying that two girls would enter the palace today to be companions to the princess, and that she would like to ask for her help in reading the faces. The state witch asked what kind of face reading was needed, and the grand concubine said it was the face of the queen. And at this time the two girls waiting in the side hall, at this time Yunoke friendly greeting to each other, the girl on the other side of the first disdainful smile, and then remembered his father's advice, the most taboo in the palace to make enemies, never let others guess their true thoughts. The girl immediately adjusted her mindset and changed to a smiling face to welcome her. Yunoke said let's the two of us get along, and In Bao Jing falsely said okay. A few moments later, the grand concubine summoned the two. The state witch hides behind a screen and scrutinizes the two girls for a while, noticing the differences. Yunoke had the appearance of a queen, but not the life of a queen. The other girl had the life of a queen but did not have the face of a queen. The witch suddenly remembers her friend's request 13 years ago to help guard a girl with the face of a queen, and that person is Yunoke. After the crowd disperses, the queen mother calls out the witch to inquire about the result. The state witch congratulates the queen on getting her wish, and Yun Bo Jian, the daughter of a magistrate, will be the owner of the Hall of Crossing. In the way of the state witch, she has to answer this way or Yunoke will not live to see tomorrow. When two girls who were to be queens entered the palace at the same time to be companions to the princess, the king summoned them for a questioning session, asking if they knew the allusion to the sentence. The first girl says that learning and politics are men's business, and that she specializes in women's virtue and is only interested in books like the biographies of women. The king nodded his head in approval. When it was the second girl's turn, she told the source of this sentence, and when the king asked what it meant, the girl said that his highness was trying to tell us that what we see and hear in the palace should never be spread to the outside, which was exactly the answer the emperor wanted. This girl called Su Yenyu made made him very satisfied. The king was not the only one who was satisfied with Yenyu, there was also the son of the world who came to request a marriage. The king asked which family member, the son said that it was the daughter of the Grand Tile School, Su Yenyu. This candidate coincides with the king's thoughts, but the rules cannot be broken, or to participate in the concubines of the selection of the world's son. The son said that he had requested for a marriage for the same reason, and that the person in charge of the selection was the grand concubine, so the winner would only be Yin Beijing, the daughter of a judge, but the emperor still did not agree, and asked the son to find his own way to solve the problem. After the son leaves, Yang Mingjun comes back and says that he wants to ask his father to grant him a marriage. When the king asks which family member, Yang Mingjun says it is Su Yenyu, the daughter of Diti Xue. The king refused, and Yang Mingjun pleaded again and again, because there would be 3 people in the final round of selection, and no matter who was elected as the Shitzi concubine, the remaining 2 people would not be allowed to remarry for the rest of their lives. Deji did not sit idly by. He summoned a man who was the head counselor of the Sunki Yongquan, because the Confucians all had a righteousness in their hearts, and a foreign relative interfering with the government was not something they wanted to see. With his son as a backer, the next day a group of Confucians from Sunki Yongquan gathered in front of the gate of the royal palace, requesting His Highness to exclude the foreign relatives and make a fair choice. The king sits in the royal palace and slowly sips his tea. This is a test, and the response of the son of the world really did not let him down. When a girl is running for a concubine tomorrow, her mother tells her to be rude when she salutes the king, to eat her noodles at the banquet and to tell her that if she has any hobbies, she only knows how to read and nothing else. Her mother did this because there were 3 people in the final round of the election, and the 2 who lost could never marry again in their lives. Yunoke says that she doesn't want to embarrass her father and wants to marry Seja, so she will do her best. Soon the selection begins, and after a round of competition, the 3 girls stand out and kneel in front of the king. The king asked only one question: if he converted him to money, how much would it be worth? The first girl knew nothing about money and could only go up, which was obviously not the answer the king wanted. The second girl was even smarter and said that His Highness's holy virtue was as high as the sky and the sea, so she didn't know how to measure it in money. This answer is okay, but when it's Yunoke's turn, she says that His Highness is only worth 1 tael. Yunoke explains that a rich man with 10,000 taels doesn't understand the preciousness of a tael, while the people who have nothing regard it as a treasure. His Highness has both the wealth of the country and relies on the people, and is somewhere in between, so he is only worth 1 tael. There is no doubt that the winner is Yenyu, and the position of Shitzi concubine is hers. The king sighs that he really didn't look at the wrong person, and the grand concubine on the upper seat is very dissatisfied. On the other hand, the queen mother orders the state witch to kill Yunoke, use your black magic, and the threatened state witch returns to the Starry Night Hall in a state of dismay, not realizing that it was she herself who was going to put that child to death. For the survival of Starry Night Hall, she had to. The next night, the grand concubine then arrives and takes out Yunoke's birth date and clothes. The state witch stops talking and begins to do the spell. A black mist rises and flies out of the Starry Night Hall, sweeping towards Yunoke's residence in the palace. The sleeping Yunoke is entangled in the black mist and begins to feel suffocated. The girl went through the selection process and became the concubine of the son of the world. In a few days the wedding will be held, but in the night was murdered. A black mist attacked her, strong suffocation feeling made her fainted. The girl has been sick, all the eunuchs cannot diagnose the cause of the disease. How can a seriously ill person married to the son of the world? The ministers begin to pressure the king to expel the concubine Su Yenyu from the palace and pursue her family for concealing her illness. Even though the king is unwilling to do so, he can't go against the law. The son of the world at this time came to Yunoke's residence in grief. At this moment he cannot do anything, can only watch the love of his life away. Night, the son sneaked out of the palace and came to her house. Looking at his lover's haggard appearance, tears unconsciously flowed down. He takes out a phoenix hairpin and gives it to Yunoke, telling her that she is the only consort in his heart and that he will wait for her to get better. Not long after the son leaves, the state witch comes back to the Su family. She tells Father Su that Yunoke is suffering from a divine disease. There is no cure. She will only die slowly in pain. And the next day Yunoke's condition deteriorates drastically. The next day, Yunoke's condition deteriorated drastically. As a father, he felt the pain of his daughter's suffering. He looked at the packet of poison left behind by the state witch, pondered for a long time, and made a decision in his heart. A few moments later, he walks into Yunoke's room with a bowl of soup, unable to bear to watch his daughter suffer from her illness. Yunoke looks at the bowl of medicine, intelligent. She has guessed her father's intentions, did not refuse, but instead spoke out to comfort. The father holds back his grief and helps his daughter up, drinking the poison for him with his own hands. On the day of Yunoke's burial, Yang Myung-jun receives the news and rushes back. Looking at his beloved's coffin being buried in the ground, he is overwhelmed with grief. Yang Ming-jun arrives at the royal palace and berates Se-sun for his incompetence. He couldn't even guard his beloved. If he were in his place, he would have done whatever it took. Seja, who has not yet recovered from his grief, realizes that his brother has also been in love with Yunoke. And at this moment, one person is digging Yunoke's grave, the state witch is waiting on the sidelines, constantly uttering urges, and another person suddenly appears, Yunoke's personal maid. The king had never touched the queen once in the 8 years of his marriage, and because of a deceased woman, the queen was still a virgin. In order to make the two of them share a room and have a child, the grandmother of the king and the grand concubine forced her to go on a hunger strike, but the king remained unmoved and excused herself on the grounds that she was weak and frail. The queen knelt for a long time in front of the palace of the grand concubine, blaming herself for all the faults and pleading with her grandmother to take back the order to go on a hunger strike. When the king arrives at the news and calls her to rise, the emperor mocks the queen's sympathy in a low voice, and really leaves no stone unturned in order to portray a virtuous persona. In order to escape his grandmother's persecution, the king traveled to live in a palace outside the capital on the pretext of recuperating his health, just to take this opportunity to see if his people, as the minister said, were living in peace and happiness. Little did he know that he would meet the woman who had died on this trip. Just after arriving at the palace, the king slipped out with his guards, only to be met with a dismal sight. From one of the boys, he learns that most of the men had been taken to the brigade. A man was spying in the dark at this point, and the king realized that this was one of the prime minister's men, so he couldn't help but take his guards and bolt until late at night, when the two were lost in the forest. In a trance, the king saw a person. It was the young Yanoke. The woman brought the two to the residence, and the king stared at the person in front of him. It's too similar, every move and tone of voice is like Yanoke in her youth. However, the woman claims that she is just a witch, but then inadvertently reveals the king's identity. The king pulls her in front of him and asks how she knew. The woman explains that when His Highness traveled during the day, she had watched from a distance. The king was disappointed and was ready to leave with his guards. Before leaving, he asked for the woman's name, but she said she had no name. The queen pleaded with the king if he could have a few more wives. The opposite king was amused by these words, and the queen said ruefully, "You do not want to share a room with me, then find another woman. In any case, you have to give birth to a child to stabilize the king's power." The emperor's eyes showed a hint of ridicule, slightly lazy side down. Said that what he hated the most was this kind of hypocrisy. The queen, mind was seen through, awkwardly got up, just took a few steps, could not help but accuse the king of indifference over the years, never saw her true heart. At this time, the king behind him was in great pain, but not because of the queen's words, but someone plotted against him. After the king was sick for a few days, the imperial physician ordered a bowl of medicinal tea, saying that His Highness recently had poor essence, and this tea could help him sleep. When the king was asleep, the professor of the observatory arrived with a witch, fearing that His Highness would not agree and that the matter needed to be done in secret. For the sake of his lordship's safety, the underlings acquiesced in the matter. The personal guards recognized it as the sorceress from that day and did not say a word. The king's brow was furrowed, and the sorceress, with a look of pity on her face, couldn't help but reach out and brush her hand to his forehead. When he woke up on the second day, the king only felt refreshed, and the court meeting, which had stopped for a few days, was reconvened. And in these few days, the prime minister and the others had already made a good undisclosed manpower document for the king to review. The king then summoned a strong man to inquire about it, and still couldn't find any loopholes, but he keenly noticed the calluses on the strong man's hands, which only someone who had just practiced swords would have. The king's heart has been clear. The prime minister this is in the private army, brewing a huge conspiracy, but he now has no one to use, can only quietly observe first. This is 8 years ago the beloved person's last letter. Let the king on the tears. This is his young love written. The letter does not have a word of love, but between the lines is full of love. Sitting with the letter to the knight, the king suddenly realized that something was wrong. The letter himself and the witch is very similar. He could not restrain his emotions and ordered the guards to bring the person here immediately. When the witch came, the king opened his mouth to ask about her life. The witch said that she was abandoned by her parents when she was young and then adopted by the goddess of mercy, but the king did not believe her. When asked for details, the witch said that she had lost her memories as a teenager due to the shock of practicing the witch's divine power. As the king continued to ask questions, the witch interrupted him with her words, saying that she is not the person you say you want to be. Faced with Yanoke's suicide note, the king sat frozen for a night, and one of the sentences made him notice a hint of something wrong. Father will bring medicine here soon, and will never see me again. The words revealed that if you drink the medicine father brings over, you will die. The king suddenly realizes that Yanoke might not be dying of a normal illness. Soon he has his guards sneak into the library and get the journal about 8 years ago, and after some perusal, he discovers some clues. It seems that his father had ordered someone to secretly investigate the matter at the beginning, but for some reason the investigation was suddenly stopped, which makes the king realize that there is something fishy going on. But it's possible that the people who knew about it are not alive today. Nope, there was still a Shangkai and Yaiguan who served the late king. Soon after, the king and his guards came to visit the house of the inner official, but they were refused, which made the king even more convinced that the other party must know something. He did not pester him and let him think it over. And at that moment, the witch was wandering down the street when she suddenly stopped in her tracks, and snippets of memories surfaced in her mind.